Welcome everyone to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Hayden Lee, and I'm joined this week by my favorite uncle, and he's joined here by his favorite nephew, Dewight Lee, owner and founder of First Choice Insurance. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This is quite the honor.
I don't know if it's that much of an honor. It's one of the blessings of having family members that start businesses is I get to harass them and ask them weird questions. So.
Absolutely. I'd expect nothing less. So.
I appreciate it. Well,
this is fun.
You've been in the insurance industry for quite a while now. I mean, you got to be, 15 years now? How long have you been doing it?
So I got my start back in 2005 with American Family. I worked for an agent in Idaho Falls. I was probably 22, 23.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Close to 17, 18 years.
Yep.
Been doing it for a while. Mm-hmm. I had another good friend of mine on, it's like the second episode, Jake Dye, sells their insurance here in Blackfoot.
Good guy.
And a question I asked him, and I'll pose that same question to you. Why insurance? Why does it seem like a lot of people sell insurance? Seems like a fairly straightforward job to get into. Like what attracted you about selling insurance?
That's a good question. Because on the outside looking in, insurance looks pretty boring. It's not very glamorous, that's for sure. The thing that probably drew me to insurance the most was the residual income that you can build from building a clientele base and being able to have lifelong customers. Unlike a lot of other businesses, you sell something once and you may never see them again.
Right.
You may never have an opportunity to have that relationship. And one thing I love about insurance is just it's relationship based. You as long as you can gain people's trust, you hope that they're a customer for life. And obviously if they're a customer for life, that's that residual income that I was talking about. And that was my first impression when I was younger of insurance. But now that I've been doing it for so long, one of my favorite things about insurance is when crap hits the fan for my customers, you get to come in and save the day.
That's awesome.
On their worst days, whether that's a car wreck or a home basement flooding or a fire or anything like that, you get to come in and be the hero. And that's fun. It's a lot of fun to be able to help people and to build that trust there and then come through on that trust when they need you. So
that's cool. It's a cool perspective to hear because so much of what I do on a day-to-day basis is help market and grow people's businesses that are in the restoration industry. Right. And they get to kind of be a part of that hero story as well. And it's cool to hear that there are still good people out there. There are still good insurance agents out there that care about you and want you to be taken care of. It's really cool to hear. But you started with American Family. That was the first place that you went and sold insurance for. Mm-hmm. And then eventually kind of struck out on your own to form your own agency. What was the process of doing that? Why did you want to strike out on your own and not be under the umbrella of like a singular large provider? What was kind of the reason for that? Yeah,
good question. So first off, American Family, I owe so much of what I've done in my career to American Family. They are an awesome company, and I would recommend them to anybody. Some of my best friends in the industry still work for American Family. Love American Family. The only downside to working for a company, one company, is just that it's only one company. And so when I was at American Family, I could see these independent agents being able to represent multiple companies and being able to sell multiple products. And I just thought, what an advantage to be able to not have a one size fits all. If American Family was having a rough year in Idaho and they took rate increase, I couldn't do anything different for my customers. I'm sorry, it is what it is. And that was hard for me not to be able to help them and try to find something better for them. And so going independent obviously opened up so many more doors and so many more options for me to be able to give to my customers and offer to my customers. And it helps with retention. When your customers believe that you're really fighting for them and trying to give them the best deal or best option available, It builds that trust and it keeps them around hopefully for a long time. So.
Yeah, it seems like, the insurance agents that I know that seem to be doing really, really well have found a way, to offer more products, whether it's additional services, maybe they only did home and auto and now they can offer life or whatever it might be, or they're able to sell independently from multiple companies and like you said, find the best price for the best situation. Was that a little scary at first when you were like, I got to go get out on my own and get my own office space and pay for my own office and pay rent and eventually pay employees? Was that like a scary initial jump for you?
Yeah, it was. And looking back, I was a little bit naive, and being naive was probably a blessing because had I known then what I know now, I probably wouldn't have done it. So
the risks.
The saying of ignorance is bliss was never truer in that case for me. I knew it was going to be a risk. Basically, I got out a small business loan as much as I could. It wasn't very much. And then we sold our home and I took all the equity out of my home, which wasn't very much because it was in 2009 is when I left. And so I took the little, nest egg that we had built up and put it all in one basket of starting my own agency. And my wife was pregnant with our second child at the time, and she actually quit her job when I made the jump. And we moved to Pocatello from Blackfoot, and it was scary. I mean, we literally had, we'd done the math, and we basically had a year's worth of income saved up. And if we didn't make money past a year, we were going to be looking for another job. And so it was terrifying, but, the good Lord took care of us and watched over us and blessed us. And so much of the growth that I had in that first year and there were just little things that happened that worked out that I knew were probably not due to anything I did, but probably were divine intervention as far as, a decent tax return and being able to, I got a small job clearing sidewalks for snow removal. A good friend of mine said he needed help doing snow removal. And so little things like that happened over that first year that allowed us to stay afloat and keep the business going. And after that first year, and once we started getting some renewals, it was definitely better. And every year it steadily got better and better. And so much of our success now is not necessarily because of me, but I was eventually able to hire good employees, good producers. I've got my good brother, Lloyd, Lee, your second favorite uncle.
Yep.
Who's been right there most of the way and growing a book of business. And Gabe Allen has grown a really nice book of business. And then Elena and Tana are my two office managers that hold the fort down for me. So I've got good staff there. But the first year was a little bit scary, but we made it. So
that's awesome. The scary part, I think for me, again, outside looking in, I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't own a small business, but, doing it on your own, it seems like for me, I could always figure that out. Like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to put food on my own table, make my own mortgage payment. Like I'm going to figure out how to do that. But then eventually it gets to a point where you've got other people that rely on you, like employees and stuff. Yeah. But really I've found with doing these interviews with people that really large growth within their companies happen when they bring on people to help them. What were some things that you looked for when you started bringing on other employees? What were some qualities that you looked for, as well as like how you were able to fit them in with the culture that you wanted to create?
That's a good question. Honestly, I would say as I've hired employees over the years, the number one thing that I look for in somebody is their attitude. So much, I mean, you think about it and you know this, Hayden, better than just as well as anybody else. But when we come to work, we spend as much time, if not more time with these people day in and day out than we do with our own families. Right. And so they become our second family. Right. And so we have to get along with them and we have to be able to have the same interests and the same goals in mind. And so for me, that starts with their attitude and their overall happiness at work. And so and then the number two would probably be their willingness to learn. I've hired a lot of people that have had zero experience in the insurance industry. And sometimes I prefer it that way because it can be hard to teach an old dog new tricks, as they say. And so bringing on people that don't have any experience, I can teach them the way I want. And so the number two trait I look for is just someone that's willing to learn, that's willing to accept, training and things like that to be able to get them where we want them. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Those seem like, as I've talked, as I've seen, the company that I work for grow, and I've seen my boss, how, she hired me, but how she also looks to hire other new employees. That's been a common theme that we've always gone back to is like, do we hire someone that knows marketing, or maybe do we hire someone that's a good culture and company fit and then teach them marketing?
Right.
And she decided to kind of go that path with me, which I hope has been a good decision for her. But I think that's honestly the best way to do it, right? Like hire to the soft skills, right? Like, are they leaders? Are they driven? Are they motivated? Do they work hard? Like hire to those skills. And then, I mean, you can teach people the insurance game. Like you can teach people how to, answer phone calls and talk to people about policies and stuff like that. I haven't had to hire or fire anybody, but it just seems like that's the way to do it. And that's the way to be successful is
for sure.
Let's not hire someone that knows insurance inside and out. Maybe let's hire someone, and sometimes you can find both, but let's find someone that has the personality traits that we want.
Yeah.
And then, teach them the things they need to know.
For sure.
As you've grown, I want to kind of relate it back and talk a little bit about, the restoration industry. As you've grown your company, I'm sure you've had to work alongside a lot of different restoration companies, but as you develop relationships with them, like in an instance where a basement might flood or a home burns down or whatever it might be, why is it important to build relationships with companies like that, like a restoration company? And how have you found the best way to do that?
So that's a good question as well. Restoration companies, it kind of goes back to the saying of little news or no news is good news when you have a claim, right? So if we have a customer with a claim, and if you get the right restoration company on it, and they know how to just take care of the customer, they know how to work with the adjuster and the insurance company, and we never hear about them or hear about the claim, those are the best experiences, it seems like. When we have to get involved, it's never, it's usually something, the adjuster and or the customer aren't seeing eye to eye on something. And so that's never fun. But as far as restoration companies, as far as building that trust and building a relationship, for me personally, and everyone's a little bit different, but for me personally, when I'm in my office and a restoration company comes in and wants to visit and get to know me, it's actually, I actually don't love that. I get what they're trying to do, but the restoration companies that have taken the time to say, hey, let's go to lunch or let's get outside of the office. When I'm outside of the office, I'm out of work mode all of a sudden. I'm interested in spending time and visiting and getting to know someone. So I guess if I was to give advice to a restoration company on how to build a relationship with an insurance agency, again, this is my opinion, but if that can be done outside of an office, I feel like they're going to have a lot more success because, again, when I'm in my office, I'm in work mode. I don't want to chit chat. I don't want to be interrupted. I want to do what I'm there to be doing. And I get it. They need to come and drop cookies off or whatever, but that would be my advice for them. And then, just over the years, the ones that communicate with you and talk to you about claims and situations, that relationship's just naturally going to be built. That trust is naturally going to be built. It is so nice to know when I have a customer to call in, and they have a small leak in the roof, right? And there's a little bit of water. I've had restoration companies that will go in there and they will find a way to make that a lot bigger deal than it needs to be.
Right.
And they will push a claim and we end up filing a claim, which that's fine, but might be $1,000, job turned into a $2,000 job that we could have probably avoided a claim on the customer's policy for. And then you get another restoration company that will come in and say, yeah, I think we can get this done for $1,000. That's what your deductible is. And I'll tell you what, when I see a restoration company that steps up and does those type of things to help the customer prevent a claim from going on their insurance, and that's huge for me. That builds the biggest amount of trust. And again, it just comes back to that communication. And we have some of the best restoration companies in East Idaho. I know most of them, and they're all good people, and they do a good job.
That's cool. No, that's some really good insight, and hopefully some good information for, what small audience we might have that is listening to this. But that restoration idea of like they want to build relationships with like insurance agents or whatever it might be. Like don't show up and try and take some of your workday away. Like, take you out of the office, go to lunch. Let's go golfing, whatever it might be, and build a relationship that way. That's some good advice.
Yep.
You've always been big on getting out in the community. Something I've appreciated about what you do, and you do things like sponsor and host golf tournaments, and you're in the Eastern Idaho State Fair parade every year. How have you seen growth in your business by getting out in the community, and why is that so important to you?
So, if you're looking at it from a strictly a marketing standpoint, it is so hard when you're out in the community doing parades and doing golf tournaments. The ROI, is that what they call it? The return on investment is probably awful. It's probably,
not good.
First of all, you can't calculate it.
No.
What I've learned for me, especially, again, it comes back to that building a customer base. Now that we have a pretty good customer base, I feel that doing those things is more important for my current customers than it is to try to get new customers.
Yep.
Trying to show your customers that you're relevant, that you're out and about, that you're doing things, that they love to see that. It's amazing how when you go down, you go through a parade and people yell your name and you wave to them and they're like, hey, that's my insurance agent. There's some pride there that like, yeah, that's my insurance agent. What's your insurance agent doing this weekend? And so for us, that's kind of what we try to focus on, is doing those things just to keep relevant and to remind our customers that we're here, that we're out in the community. And again, we're not perfect at it. We don't do everything. We probably should do a lot more. But again, I think doing those things just get you in the minds of your customers. And as a byproduct, you probably do get customers that will remember seeing you when they do come to a point in their life when they want to get a quote on some insurance. So,
that's cool. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's probably more crucial for retention because you can't track the ROI. Like for every piece of candy thrown, you're not going to be able to say, this sold X amount of dollars in car insurance this year or whatever. Like you're not going to be able to figure that out, but you're probably right. Like, and it's funny that you say that because, when we we'll build a website for a client, we talk about a lot of things. Yes, this will probably generate new revenue and bring in new customers, but like a big thing as well is like retaining customers. Like your current customers should be able to find your contact info on your website, and it's also a retaining tool. And I think community involvement can be the same way. Yeah, it might bring in some new, but it's probably mostly going to help you retain the ones that you have. Yep. And that's, for in the insurance world is just as important as bringing in new customers.
For sure.
If you could, other than like some of that community involvement, bringing on, the new employees, if you had to narrow down your growth over the years, you've been out on your own, doing your own agency for, you've been independent for 12, 13 years now. Mm-hmm. What would be, you think, the biggest factor to your growth? That to grow it to where you are today, 2022, what would be the biggest factor if you could narrow it down to one thing?
Probably the number one thing that's helped me grow and help the other agents in our office grow is just a referral basis, is these what we call centers of influence, which are mortgage brokers. And so that's really what we focus on, and real estate agents. Those are our primary focus. Obviously, we get a lot of referrals from customers, and we ask customers for, did I say that right? We get a lot of referrals from customers, and we'll ask for those. But probably the main thing is our relationship with mortgage brokers and real estates, and trying to market to them and build a relationship with them, just like restoration companies are doing with us. We're doing that with mortgage brokers and real estate agents to try to get them to refer business. So that's probably been the biggest thing that we've done. And it's funny, as we've grown, it kind of just self-perpetuates a little bit easier than it did when we were smaller and younger. But I would probably,
that's cool.
I'd probably point it to those mortgage brokers. And if any of them are listening, thank you. I wouldn't be here without them.
That's awesome. No, that's a great, I mean, I kind of threw that at you off the cuff, but yeah, I've just noticed that a lot of people, if they distill, their company's growth down to one thing, it kind of challenges them to figure out, okay, how have we, if we've been operating for a decade, like how have we grown it like that? That's cool. Yeah. Again, relating it back to small businesses, this is probably only for my personal knowledge, but what are some things that small business owners, whether they're starting a business or maybe they've been in operation for a few years, what are some things that you think they miss about insurance? Like things that they need to know as a small business owner, like I need to have this policy, or I need to have, my boss today was talking about an umbrella policy because she owns a business. Like there's extra worries that you have to worry about as if you own a business. What are some things that you think small business owners would need to know about insurance?
Oh, that's a super good question. It's funny you say that or ask that, because we bought some policies we bought cruise insurance down in Pocatello, and Lloyd and Gabe are playing an integral part of taking over a lot of those customers and starting to build those relationships. And so one thing that we created was kind of a list, and most of it is commercial insurance. And so one thing they're doing is going to these business owners with this list of key items that we want to make sure that they are aware of, that they either have coverage for or that they know is available to them. I'm trying to think, probably to start off, the biggest thing is, especially with the inflation right now, is to make sure that they have enough coverage on their building.
Oh, yeah. Seriously.
That's been, I would guess that unless you've met with your agent, almost everybody's underinsured right now.
Wow.
And so, and what's scary is it just keeps going up every year. So I was talking to a real estate agent, and I think he told me we're up, is it 50 or 70% from 5 years ago?
That's insane.
It's just stupid.
So if you haven't re-upped your policy or made any changes, that's a huge chunk of money that if your building burns down, like you're just out. Like
you are. I was talking to a customer today. They have a 2,000 square foot home.
Okay.
We have them insured for $333,000, which seems like, it seems like enough coverage. I was talking to the builder that built that home. I said, hey, and so if you do the math on that, I think it's $167 a square foot.
Okay.
And so I said, so what are we at now to build that home? And he said, you're well over $200 a square foot, possibly $230 a square foot, depending on how nice you are. So, that's a huge, and we wrote that policy probably 3 years ago.
Yeah. In 3 years, it's gone up 25, 30%. Yeah. Like that's insane.
Yeah. So, I mean, so I would start there. That's number one, is the building coverage. Some coverages that as a business owner, you got to start thinking about is cyber liability. That's a big one right now with, if you carry any type of personal data for any of your customers on a computer and that gets stolen, you are liable. And if these customers, they could file a class action lawsuit against you and try to get, it's scary what could happen if they get that information of your customers, and whoever steals it, who knows what they do with it. And so there's cyber liability. That's a big one right now that, we're making sure customers are aware of. Another one that's really interesting is employment. Sorry, I'm trying to think of the right term. It's slipping my mind. But what is it called?
You're good.
What kind of insurance agent am I? I can't even think of what it's called. employment practice. Sorry.
Oh, okay. You're good. Gotcha.
Employment practice liability. So that's going to cover if you have an employee sue you for wrongful termination.
Gotcha.
If you have an employee that maybe you forget to add them to your health insurance benefits, and they have something medical happen to them, and they're not covered because you forgot to add them to your benefits. There's a lot of liability with employees and making sure that you're following all the rules that the government set out for you. And so that's another policy to consider having. A lot of times you can endorse that onto your business owner's package policy if you have one of those. But I'd say those three things. I could go on, but no one wants to hear about insurance.
No,
it's super boring. But
I think especially the first one, man, is so applicable right now. People just don't know. I mean, last week I got a letter in the mail that, the county here in Idaho says my home is worth twice what it was worth last year. On property taxes. So if things like that aren't taken care of on your insurance for your business, you could be in a really, really rough situation if something were to happen. And, we all hope nothing happens. That's the whole idea behind insurance. But I mean, when stuff does, you want to make sure you're protected. So that's really, really awesome. Well, thank you for all of that info. I'm curious to see what you think of what's the future of First Choice. What are you hoping to see happen in the next 5, 10, 20 years? I don't know how long you're going to be selling insurance, but what are you hoping for?
You know what? I think just to keep growing enough that my employees can continue to progress and make a better living year in and year out. Keep my employees happy, and not get big enough to where our customers, we don't even know who our customers are anymore. But obviously we want growth, but we don't want it at a rate that's going to make us bigger and make our customers less important to us on an individual basis. And so obviously growth for our employees, growth for as an agency, but to maintain the focus and the customer relationships that we already have and keep those intact. I mentioned Lloyd, Gabe, Elena, and Tana. We have some great new employees right now, Dakota and Andrew and Race, and we're looking to hire more and, really just to be able to take those new employees that we have and really just give them careers. And me personally, we don't need to be huge. We don't need to be as big as some of the other agencies in town, but we would like to have some growth and be able to provide a good living for our employees and give a good service to our customers. So
that's awesome. It seems like that's a battle that a lot of people face if they get too big. Having the relationship with their customers, and I think that's telling of who you are and who First Choice is. That you want growth. We all do. We all want to grow, but you want to provide that personal customer service aspect. And I think that's telling of who you guys are. So thank you for everything. This has been super insightful for me. I hope our audience feels the same way, but I've really, really enjoyed what you've talked about, how you've grown your business, things to watch out for as a small business owner. I want to close with the same 3 questions that I always ask every podcast guest.
Okay.
First question, is there a book or podcast that you're listening to or reading right now that you're really enjoying?
Other than Locked On Jazz.
Yeah, that's kind of a sad story right now. I have a hard time listening to that right now, but
I'm terrible. So much of what I listen to is probably more for entertainment than growth.
No, I'm the same way.
But and book wise, one thing I actually really like reading are biographies, autobiographies and biographies. So I would say, and right now I just started one for Phil Mickelson, although I'm not sure he had anything to do with it. So that's definitely on the entertainment side of it.
Love it.
But I've read some autobiographies and I love learning about these super successful people and what makes them tick. Like it is so fascinating to me. One example is Larry Miller. I read his book and he started as a parts guy and he was so good with parts and he basically, and numbers and he could remember all the parts numbers for all these thousands of parts that he had, and he inventoried them and created basically this inventory. And I don't know what you call it, but he did this for these car dealerships, and that's kind of how he moved up in the car dealership business and eventually got to where he started his own car dealerships and was super successful. And so anyways, that's just one example. I love reading these biographies about people and what makes them successful and what makes them good, and seeing if I can maybe, learn from them myself. That's cool.
No, that same way. I read the books that I do read, and I don't read as much as I should, or generally nonfiction and biographies. I read a lot of those too.
Yeah.
Okay. Second question.
Okay.
End of a long day. I know you have, as a business owner and a guy that's in sales, a lot of what you do is in sales. Like, I'm sure you have some long days. What do you do to relax or recharge at the end of a long day?
Well, so I wish I could say I did like yoga or something like that, but
Me too.
Looking at me,
go work out, exercise. I should probably do a lot more of that.
I wish I could say I went jogging or something, but I don't. My kids keep me really busy. After work, it's usually spent running around with them. And my guilty pleasure, honestly, is crawling in bed with my wife and watching a movie.
Yeah.
So, and watching, some sports or whatever on TV, just relaxing. But yeah, my kids, they do a good job at taking my mind off of work and their activities and what they have going in their life. That does a pretty good job at, detaching me from that. So
no, it's hugely important. We've talked about it multiple times. And having something that'll take your mind off everything. Rob Pilecki, I had him on a couple of weeks ago. He calls it, like, I can't remember exactly how he phrased it, but basically having something just mind-numbingly, like, almost boring, but just can absolutely take your mind off it. So for him, it was like playing video games with his kids, like watching TV, whatever it might be, like just have something that you can just shut your brain off. And people think that's dumb. People think, the influencers out there these days are always like, oh, you got to grind. You got to be working 24/7. You can't ever shut off. And it's like, okay, I get that to a point, but if you really want to recharge, you've got to have some time to just shut your brain off, more than just sleep. It's got to be some awake time that you can shut off. So, okay. So we've kind of come to the end here. Last question.
Okay.
You've been doing this for 17, 18 years now. If you could rewind to the beginning of it all, to the beginning of your career, what's one thing that you would tell yourself?
Oh my gosh. What the winning lottery ticket number is.
Invest in Apple, Google, Bitcoin, whatever else. Yeah.
Man, I that's such a hard question. I don't know. I'd probably just tell myself to just, work, just know that work pays off, and then just to just stress over the things that you have control over. I think so much of the stress for me over the years has been things that I can't control.
Yeah.
And I just would tell myself to enjoy life. I don't know about other people, but I know for me, I get so caught up in what's like, how much better life is going to be when this part happens, when this happens for me, when I get this thing, maybe I get my house paid off, or when my kids are this old, or whatever it might be. I always find myself looking down the road and I'm not enjoying the journey. And as cliche as that sounds, I need to just remember to enjoy the journey, because I look back, 15 years ago when I started my business, and that was super stressful. And all I could do is look forward to this time in my life when it's not as stressful as far as, growing the business goes. But I think I missed out on so much of there was less stress, and the stress was different back then, and I missed out on what was different.
Yeah.
And I didn't appreciate where I was at in my life, where my kids were at in their lives, as much as I wish I would have. And so, I'd probably tell myself that. And before you close, Hayden, I just want to thank you for having me. This is really cool that you do this podcast, and proud of you as my nephew, and for, I would never do what you're doing. I would be terrified. When I heard you were doing this, I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And so proud of you. And I think it's awesome that you're doing this so that we can learn from each other and learn from other business owners, and Michael and Katie for giving you this opportunity. They're as good as they come. So I'm just appreciative to know them and be able to be a part of this. So,
well, I sincerely appreciate your insights. I think, I know rather that a lot of people are going to get some good information out of this. And it's been super fun for me. If for nothing else, selfishly, to just get to sit down with people that I find really successful and get to learn what makes them tick. And I think that's really cool. So thank you seriously for coming on and talking and walking us all through your journey and First Choice's journey. And I hope you guys have great success in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Subscribe on any major podcast platform or check out our website at successonpoint.com.